We are, of course, doing a Google Hangout today on a very important day, World Press Freedom Day. We have representatives from across the continent, journalists, just to give us their feedback on how far they think we've come with regards to particularly media freedom. And that is the theme for 2012, New Voices, Media Freedom Helping to Transform Societies. Thank you all so much for talking to us. Nigeria, let's start with you. When we talk about media freedom, is this a careless statement? Is it an elusive statement? Or would you say that there is media freedom in Africa, particularly today?
And because the journalist is not the owner of the media, he has a limit to which he can go. If there is an issue of fraud in government and the owner of that media, okay, has a stake in government, if you have some contracts with government, and such particular, let me say, the information gets to the editor.
All right.
The editor is the final gatekeeper. He definitely will have to get across to the owner.
So, all right, let me just interrupt you there, Isaiah. You say that, of course, the editor is the gatekeeper. We'll come back to that point in just a bit. Let's now move to Kenya. Henry Githaiga, of course, who joins us from Citizen Television. And Henry, with regards to ownership of the stories that the journalists put together, is there a sense that that is becoming a lot more of an issue with regards to not having the ownership of the story that you put together, and so that by the time it's on air, you yourself have reservations about the way it's portrayed to the rest of the world?
Every time there's a big story breaking, it's already on social media, it's already broken. So even if you try and change the story to suit someone's agenda, people will know. So social media is sort of giving us a leeway in terms of what we can put on air for our stories.
There's a sense of responsibility that may be lacking in that space because we journalists have certain controls before we air a story. We have to make sure it's factual, the information is backed up by different sources. But somebody with an access to an internet connection does not necessarily have this kind of controls, and therefore sometimes there might be a bit of misinformation spreading out there in as much as there are good elements.
I just want to get from Uganda where it stands with regards to media censorship in the country. Do journalists feel free enough to be able to disseminate information without that sense that they are going to be victimized in any sense?
We have not yet reached a level, though there are those discussions, you know, amongst ourselves as journalists, that probably if I put something on Facebook, I could be victimized for it. Nobody has yet been arrested for posting information on Facebook or Twitter. But I know for a fact that in its daily usage, it's still not big. It's still on a social level, as it were.
Ghana, could you give us a picture of the challenges, really, that journalists face in Ghana today? If you could just sum it up, what would you say is the biggest challenge?
Because politicians tend to control, especially radio, you have the direction of the radio being moved towards partisan, parochial interest. But I think that media in Ghana is largely free. The problem is that the capacity of the journalists is not that high, so you tend to have control by ownership. And I think that we have a crisis of confidence because we have lots of airtime and you don't have enough good quality programming.
I want to thank every one of you for joining us on the World Press Freedom Day, just to be able to give us your views with regards to journalism and how far we are going. Many thanks for that to all the countries that participated. So obviously everyone emphasizing the fact that there needs to be a lot more responsibility, regulations need to be checked, training of journalists just to ensure that there are responsible people behind the stories that we hear. And the one thing that stood out the most was social media and how it's taken over and how it's easier for people to now access the truth and not necessarily take what's on TV and radio as the gospel truth. So some interesting ideas coming out there from the Google Hangout. For now, it's back to you, Michael, in studio.